All right, today we're going to be doing factoring review. So factoring is one of those skills that you learn back in Algebra 1. It's kind of the key skill that we want you to take away from Algebra 1. So we factor when we have an x squared and an x term in our equations. And we're going to try to implement this a little bit more as we kind of progress this year, just to teach you get better at factoring and kind of bring it back. So the first rule for factoring is that all of your equations have to equal 0. So all of my equations I have here today are already equaling 0. But sometimes you're going to have to rearrange them. And the point of factoring is that when you have multiple x terms, you can't just get x by itself and then solve like we normally do. Since there's multiple x's, we're going to have to actually factor and make some parentheses and figure out what terms you could have. So when we factor, you are going to get two different answers. So this first example says x squared plus 3x minus 10. So we're going to make our parentheses. All right, the first thing that goes into these parentheses is what times what gives me x squared? Well, x times x gives me x squared. And then the second thing you're going to think about is what times what gives me 10. So let's think about the factors of 10. The factors of 10 are 1 and 10 and 5 and 2. All right, and our goal is when we put those in there, our goal is that they should add up to or subtract to 3x. So let's try 1 and 10 first. If I put 1 and 10 in there, if I do 1 times x, I get x. If I do x times 10, I get 10x. Is there any way you can combine x and 10x to make it 3x? No. So 1 and 10 are the answers here. So we're going to try 5 and 2. 5 and 2. So now I've got 5 times x, which is 5x, and x times 2, which is 2x. Is there any way you can make 5x and 2x into 3x? Well, yeah, you can say 5x minus 2x would equal 3x. So since it's 5x minus 2x, it'd be a plus and a minus, and you have factored. All right, now if I asked you to solve these, what you would do is you take each of those parentheses and you set them equal to 0 and solve. So if I do that, I would do x plus 5 equals 0 and x minus 2 equals 0, and I would solve. So I would subtract 5 from both sides, so I get x equals negative 5 and x equals 2 as my two solutions. All right, next problem here. We've got x squared plus 2x minus 24. So we're going to create our parentheses. Okay. First up, what times what gives me x squared? X and x. And then we're going to be looking at what times what gives me 24. But we want it to add or subtract to 2. So let's think of the factors of 24. We've got 1 and 24. I don't think I could add or subtract 1 and 24 to get 2x. So I don't think it's going to be that one. I've got 2 and 12. I could get 10 or 14. That won't get me 2. I've got 3 and 8 goes into 24. Roll 3 and 8. That could get me 11, or that could get me 5. So that's not it. We've got 4 and 6. Oh, here we are. I think 4 and 6 we can somehow make into 2. So I'm going to put the 4 and I'm going to put the 6. So from here to here, I've got 4x. Here to here, I've got 6x. So how can we make 4x and 6x into positive 2x? Well, I could do 6x minus 4x, and that would give me that 2x. So it's going to be minus that 4 and plus that 6. And again, remember, you can take those and set them equal to 0. So I've got x minus 4 equals 0. So x equals 4. And x plus 6 equals 0. So x equals negative 6 as my two solutions. All right, try number 3 on your own here. So pause the video, try it. So when we do this one, what times what gives you x squared? X and x. What times what gives you 18 but gets to negative 9? So think of 18. I've got 1 and 18. I don't think I can make that into 9. I've got 2 and 9. I don't think that could get me to 9 either. And I've got, 3 and 6. I think 3 and 6 I can get to 9 somehow. So 3 and 6. I've got 3x and 6x. Now, if I want to make those negative 9, they both have to be negative. So now when I go to solve, I've got x minus 3 equals 0, which means x equals 3 as a solution, and x minus 6 equals 0, so x equals 6 is a solution. Now I'm going to kind of amp it up here with, now instead of an a value just being x squared, we have a 2x squared here. It will not change your problem too terribly much. So what times what gives you 2x squared? Well, 2x and x gives you 2x squared. And now we're going to look at what times what gives me 12. Now remember, we've got 1 and 12. And we're going to have to kind of guess and check all of these. So 1 and 12. This gives me 1x and 24x. And remember, my goal is to get to -5, so I don't think 1 and 12 are going to be my options there. Okay, we've also got 2 and 6. Okay, if I do 2 and 6, I've got 2x and 12x. I don't think that's going to get me to 5 either. We've got 3 and 4. So this gives me 3x, and this gets me 8x. Oh, I think we can figure something out here. So we want it to be a -5x. So we want our bigger number to be negative, -8, plus 3x would give me -5x. So it'd be plus and minus. Now, once we have that factor, we're going to set them equal to 0. So I've got 2x plus 3 equals 0, and x minus 4 equals 0. I'm going to have to do a little bit more math on this one. I'm going to have to subtract 3 from both sides, and then divide by 2. So 3 halves, -3 halves is an answer, and x equals 4 is a solution. We've got 3x squared plus 5x plus 12 here, so plus 2, make your parentheses. What times what gives you 3x squared? Well, 3x and x. And then what times what gives you 2? Well, thankfully, 2 only has one option, 1 and 2. So we just have to figure out which combination works. We're going to try 1 and 2. I've got 1x and 6x. Is there any way you can make 1x and 6x into 5x? Yeah, I just need to subtract that 1x, negative and positive. We're going to set those both equal to 0 and solve now. 3x minus 1 equals 0, and x plus 2 equals 0. 3x equals 1, x equals 1/3, x equals -2. And now our last problem. This one's got some really big numbers here. But when you see those big numbers, take a pause. So I've got 2x squared plus 12x minus 320. If I look at all of those numbers, 2, 12, and 320, they have what we call a GCF. I think all of those terms have a 2 in common. So let's factor out or divide by 2. When I do that, I get x squared plus 6x minus 160. That looks a little bit more manageable for us to factor. So when you think of the multiples of 160, now that's a pretty big number, so let's think. We've got 1 and 160. I don't think that's going to help us get to that 6. I've got 2 and 80. I think that's still too big. I've got 3, doesn't go into it. 4 and 40, still too big. Does 5 go into 160? I think 5 does go into 160. 32 times. I think that's still too big, though. We're going to do 160 divided by 6 to see what we get. Nope. We can try 7. Nope. 8 and 20. 9 doesn't go into it. And let's try 10 and 16. So I think 10 and 16s are a combination here. So 10 and 16. 10 times x is 10x. X times 16 is 16x. And if I want it to be positive 6x, I'm going to have to subtract that 10x. So it's going to be negative and positive. We're going to say x minus 10 equals 0. So x equals 10. And x plus 16 equals 0.